Welcome to the Liquidity Event, a show about all things personal finance with a laser focus on taxes, financial independence, and equity compensation. Hosted by AJ and Shane of Brooklyn FI, each episode will focus on a personal finance topic, some driven by news headlines and sometimes driven by listener questions. And sometimes you'll just get two money nerds rambling about what they think is interesting. Just a quick note before we get started, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax or investment advice.
Hello, and welcome to episode 109 of the Liquidity Event. We are your hosts, Shane Mason. Welcome back, Johnny boy. This episode is being recorded on June 25th, airing on June 28th. And quick reminder, we will answer any questions that you leave us in a message on the pod. The link is memo.fm/liquidityevents. Let's go. John, what's on your mind? How you doing, buddy? Where you at?
Doing pretty well here in sunny Lancaster, Pennsylvania. A little cloudy here today, but it is summertime. We had this heat wave pass through here, Shane. It was like 95 to 100 degrees the end of last week. Even the pool was somewhat uncomfortable. So definitely a first world problem, but it was toasty. How about you? How are things in CDMX?
Even the pool was too hot. Yeah, that is a first world problem. My air conditioning unit arrived.
That's good timing.
So stoked. Yeah, it's good timing. It's very hot here. They don't believe in air conditioning or screens here. So they're just down to get demolished by mosquitoes and leave the windows open down here. Did you see the thing about, I had to import some screens.
Okay.
And I bought a portable AC unit to Americanize my house down here in Mexico.
You had to, were there tariffs on that, or are they covered under USMCA? They're the free trade of screens from the States.
There's tariffs. Yeah. I got to pay the import fees.
Okay.
Which I'm happy to do. Happy to do it. I can't sleep at 90 degrees getting demolished by mosquitoes.
Yeah, it sounds like a quick way to get West Nile, and not be able to sleep when you're scratching your legs all night either. So that sounds fun.
Don't knock it till you try it, buddy. West Nile gives you some good hallucinations.
Have you been doing any reading lately, Shane? It's the summertime. I'm a big summertime reader. The rest of the year I kind of suck. I don't think I know how to read like the other 9 months out of the year, but I'm a bigger summer reader. What about you? You like to crank out some books? Anything lately?
Yeah, I have a list, actually. I'm trying to read 12 books a quarter this year.
12 books a quarter?
I'm trying to read 50 books this year.
Okay,
yeah.
like 48. Okay.
I can pull the list up. I can tell you, I'm reading a bunch of books about history right now, a bunch of CIA books, which I never gotten into before. Okay. Alan Dulles, The Devil's Chessboard. Okay. Are you familiar with this
Alan Foster
dude?
Dulles, he was the director of the CIA at one point, right? Back in the day?
For a long time. Yeah, also...
Like the J. Edgar Hoover of the CIA, perhaps?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. He got a lot of Nazis out of the war along the rat lines. Didn't tell people about the Holocaust, even though he was the first person to know.
Ooh.
He was responsible for the Bay of Pigs invasion. He cheated on his wife 100 times.
Is this why they want to rename Dulles Airport to Trump Airport? I think there's a push to do that in D.C. There was a bill to do that.
So something I didn't know is that the airport's actually named after his brother, who was the head of the State Department. So we got two brothers, head of the State Department and head of the CIA. So one is the right hand of the king and one is the left hand.
Interesting thing is that there's a tight connection between the two. And so Mike Pompeo, Trump's Secretary of State, had been CIA director. Bill Burns, our CIA director, had been a deputy secretary of state. Kind of back and forth. When you think diplomacy, you don't think of spying necessarily, but they're very much intertwined with each other. So... on a similar vein, I just finished a book called Nuclear War: A Scenario, which was quite the page turner. A little depressing, but basically the good news is that we're about 75 minutes away from Armageddon at about any point in time, and so yeah, it was very captivating. Talked about all the decisions that need to be made. The president has about 6 minutes to make a call if we think we're under attack, and kind of crazy to think that's how quickly you need to decide whether you're going to end the world or not. But yeah,
is that by Annie Jacobson?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'm reading one of her books about the CIA here.
Oh, nice.
In my background,
nice.
Here, yeah, she's an awesome writer.
Oh, yeah, captivating. Yeah. I was at the beach on vacation, read it in like 2.5 days, and I never read a book in like 2.5 days. So. But that's great. That's great. Any shout outs you got for today, Shane? I'm reading this one. I'd like to understand this a little bit better. So please share with the class.
I had dinner last night with an accountant, as one does, and she was
Yay.
she was telling me it was a group of 4 Latino accountants down here in Mexico City. They were getting together, and I crashed their party. And she told me that she never has meals while she's dating someone. She never has meals with another man.
Oh, that's what this means.
She said,
okay.
Yeah. I started laughing and I said, why is that? She said, well, I work in risk management. It just seems like obvious to avoid any risks in this space. She's a SOX 2 compliance internal.
So she didn't eat with you. Didn't have dinner with her. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there was 4 of us there. It wasn't a one-on-one.
Okay, it's like a Mike Pence kind of thing. It's like a Mike Pence kind of thing.
Exactly.
But it's funny because the note that Shane left in the spreadsheet we used to prepare for this podcast says, the internal auditor that told me she doesn't go on dates with men while she's in a relationship. And when I read it that way, I was like, oh, this is wow. She sounds like a good partner, a good person. But now this makes more sense. So
not bad.
Yeah, I got a quick shout out to make. My kickball team is 4-0 right now. The Crossing 69ers 4-0, another win last night. So,
how many games are there in a kickball?
We've got 6 regular season and then playoffs.
Year.
And then we'll play again in the fall. There's a summer season, fall season. Adult rec league.
6? That's it?
Yeah, it depends on. We play in a minor league baseball stadium field, and so it depends on like what their schedule's like and when we can use it. But yeah, so we 6 regular season and playoffs, and so we'll see. And then we'll play another season starting like September. But yeah, shout out to my team. I've been playing first base this season. Not bad. Thought it would be worse. Thought I'd play worse.
Are you digging any big scoops out this year so far?
I had one play that I missed last night, but a couple others. It was windy last night. Still managed to haul them in, although I do have a little bit of quad injury. I think I'll be okay.
Can you throw curveballs and strikes in kickball?
Our pitcher's pretty nasty.
Fastballs and curveballs?
You kind of like sidearm pitch it, and it bounces a little bit, and it can be a little tricky. Yeah, you don't want to just like bowl it right down the middle, so they're going to launch it. You don't want that.
All right. Let's get into the articles. I think we have 2 articles this week. We wanted to do a fun dive. I was looking through some articles over the past week, and somebody was talking about how the 4% rule is no longer the bona fide. I personally mentally have been using the 4% rule every time I think about my own
your
retirement.
financial independence. You're just taking your annual expenses, multiplying them by 25, and saying, "Am I there yet?"
Yeah. So selfishly, I said, John, my director of financial planning, can you inform me how off the mark I am with my 4%
when you can retire?
rule?
It should be just about another 60 or 70 years, Shane. Things are looking just fine. So hang tight. But yeah, I think 4% rule is a fun topic because it is a very popular rule of thumb that's widely out there. Do you know how long the 4% rule's been around, Shane?
90s? 80s?
1994. Bill Bengen is the guy who wrote basically a very popular paper on withdrawal rates, looking back historically at tons of data saying, what would be an acceptable rate. And before we jump into this too far, should we just set some people may not have heard of the 4% rule. They may not know what it is.
Yeah. Help me out. Can we do some podcast math?
Yes, let's do some podcast math, okay? So the 4% rule is, let's say you have $1 million put away for your retirement, okay? And so in your first year of retirement, the theory of the 4% rule is that you can take 4% of that account, so $40,000 out in year one, and then you adjust that $40,000 withdrawal by the rate of inflation every single year thereafter, and you should likely not run out of money. And so $40,000 year one, maybe it's about $42,000 year two, and so on and so forth, and your portfolio should be able to sustain it. There are some people that think, if I only take 4% of my portfolio out every year, I won't run out of money. If you only actually take 4% of your portfolio out every year, you will never run out of money because you're only taking out 4% of your portfolio. It's like if you only ever go halfway, you'll never get there. But 4% rule is 4% starting balance, adjusted for inflation annually, low likelihood of running out of money for those who are not familiar.
How was that tested? How did they figure that out? Was it historical or looking into the future?
They look at historical returns for a variety of asset classes, basically. I think it was a 60-40 portfolio that they were basing it off of and saying, hey, if you had done this, lived for a considerable amount of time, low likelihood of you going broke. And so it's a good rule of thumb. It's a starting point, right? But now you're reading this article, Shane, that kind of goes in on it a little bit, is saying it's not the case. What'd you learn?
Well, I mean, I guess it's just more complicated than pulling 4% out. I mean, it's just easy for someone mentally to take a look at, all right, if I have $1 million and I pull 4% out of that per year, I get about $3,300 a month, right? And you compare that to your current monthly spending and you're like, all right, is that what I'm currentently spending, right? Like, if that matches up, then you can get ahead and retire and you can have the same exact lifestyle that you have right now. I'm spending more than that.
Are you? You're spending more than $3,300 a month?
Per month. So it turns out I'm going to need more than $1 million to retire. But it's just more complicated than that, right? We got all these other things coming on. There's like new paradigms that have come out. Like, what is this? Tell me, John, about this risk-based spending guardrail situation that we have here. I'm loosely familiar with it. I think it's like in good years, you spend more. In bad years, you spend less. But like, what are the pros, cons?
Exactly. And so there are some concepts that come out and said, 4% rule sounds great, but right, if your portfolio does very well, and so let's say you started your retirement, terrible time to do it, but let's say it was like 2008 that you started your retirement. So 4% of your portfolio that was down 30% the year before, okay, and then you get that rally back in the market, in the year since the global financial crisis. The 4% rule would, if you had stuck to that number from 2008 and just adjusted for inflation, you would likely have a hell of a lot more money saved right now. And the 4% rule would leave you with a large legacy, more than you might ever need. And so when you think about risk-based adjustments, it's really, hey, if I made more money, I can actually bump up my withdrawal a bit and take out more. If the market does poorly, I can bump it down. But I think the fundamental question, Shane, that we come back to when we think about retirement planning and spending and that sort of thing is, great, okay, how are your expenses moving in retirement? If you have largely fixed expenses, right, housing, healthcare, whatever it might be, and very low discretionary spending, you might not be able to adjust your spending down. And therefore, there is inherent risk in your plan if you if you need to withdraw what becomes 5, 6, 7% of your portfolio on an annual basis to sustain your lifestyle, because there's no discretion to dial back, right, in the down market. So
in a down market, it wasn't in the article we read, if you retired at the height of the bubble, that was a nightmare for you, right?
Yeah, typically.
Because you're withdrawing. I think the big problem is just, first of all, like, it's easy to comprehend the fixed withdrawal rate, right? Like I'm pulling 4% out every year, makes me feel comfortable. I've almost bought an annuity in that case. And you can almost understand why people are attracted to annuities, even though objectively they are worse off for you financially. But at least it's a guarantee amount of money that you're going to get for the rest of your life. Of course, unless the annuity company goes out of business and they're not reinsured and all that, the odds of that are infinitesimal. But yeah, like, as soon as you tell me, like, actually, we're going to adjust your income every year for the rest of your retirement, it becomes like a nightmare to, like, there's just all that uncertainty.
And how much are you going to adjust it by? And is my portfolio able to sustain it? I think Morningstar came out.
Makes me wonder.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. Just like the people that are promoting this adjustment every year strategy are financial advisors that you would need to consult with
in order to do it.
In order to, of course. But they're right. Like, I feel that they're right about it. Well, but
it's more nuanced than that too, though, right? And so Morningstar, I guess, came out in 2022, and they said it's really 3.3%. It's not 4% based on the data that they looked at. Bill Bengen and a few other folks kind of came back and was like, "Whoa, we don't agree with your data, your analysis, that sort of thing." But it's even more complicated than that, right? Because, Shane, let's say you were to retire at 55. Okay, I know you want to, ideally do it maybe a little bit sooner than that, so you can gallivant, as we talked about last week, a little bit more.
You son of a bitch.
Yeah, I said it. Anyway, so you can gallivant a little bit more. Well, guess what? So you have 55 until 62, which is the earliest you can take Social Security, right? You have that 7-year time frame where your withdrawal might need to be higher than 4%, but you know that you're going to get this government payment at some point. Now, by the time you're 62, we'll probably, not have Social Security anymore. The age might be higher. Who knows what that'll look like because you're such a young man, of course. But there are a lot of factors that come into play. And it's not as simple as the 4% rule. But the 4% rule is a great rule of thumb for somebody trying to figure out how close am I to some degree of financial independence. And so I look at it more so, the 4% rule is a compass, right? It's good to have, but it's pretty fucking useless unless you have a map too.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen with what? Like real estate prices, taxes,
your healthcare costs, right? Retirement,
healthcare
long-term
costs.
care, or all those scary things, right?
So what retirement rate should I be using at my age if I was to retire tomorrow, John?
Not 4% instead of 4%?
Well, I was playing a game with somebody over the weekend. There's the funny
This
thing,
sounds fun.
the dark side of retirement planning is your death is the part of it, right? You get to choose when you die.
Yeah. You tell me when
What's
you're going
the
to die, and
quote?
I can tell you
You tell me.
exactly how much you could spend and how to end with zero, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. So I was playing a game. We were going through a series of questions to get to know each other. And it was, if you knew you were going to die in 1 year, how would you change your life?
This sounds like life planning.
ran
This sounds like the kinder questions.
It was like some of the questions were like that. It was the New York Times 36 questions to love.
Oh, yes. Who were you? Do tell. What else were you up to this weekend, Shane? Some gallivanting, it sounds like.
I will not be full disclosure, but I was doing the questions, and one of them. You don't have to do that just with a romantic partner. It's interesting to do that even with your friends. If you were going to die in 1 year, how would you change your life? And I, immediately go to stop working, right? And I think that question would be different depending on if you're obsessed with work or not, or if you're more obsessed. So I was just trying to think about how much money I could spend every day. And I was like, oh man, I could spend this amount of money every day. We'd be staying in some nice hotels, doing
eating
some
some great
traveling,
meals.
just blowing it out. Yeah. But you're on the 100% withdrawal rate.
Exactly. Right.
The 100% rule is now in effect.
It's like
you got 1 year.
It's like that old joke. I have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life as long as I die by like Labor Day weekend. You know what I mean? Like it's
this weekend.
Yeah.
What were you saying about Morningstar? I kind of derailed you there with the 36 questions.
They came out with research. They basically said it's not 3.3%. It's not 4%. It's 3.3%. But I think, I've had client conversations over the years here, especially with some of our younger clients, Shane, where they are looking at it and they're saying, I want to be financially independent. I don't want to have to work, or I don't want to have to go work at this pace anymore. And so, once I can hit the 4% rule, I'll be fine. And I'm like, whoa. You're 31 years old, okay?
Right.
And sequence of return risk is a very big deal. And so for context, for those of you unfamiliar, sequence of return risk is basically saying in your early years of retirement or financial independence, if we have a 30% down year market followed by 10% down year in the market, that can really mess up your retirement plan if you're starting to withdraw from the portfolio. And that risk is compounded when we're looking at a financial independence scenario of maybe 50 or 60 years, right? So think of the FIRE crowd. Okay, and so I've almost told clients, it's not really the 4% rule if you're 30 years old or 35 years old. It's more like the 2 to 3% rule. It's a 2.5% rule because you need to build in to your plan a scenario, less so that a year from now the market sells off and you're in trouble, because if you haven't worked for a year, you can probably fairly easily go back and find a job and go back to work. But if you haven't worked for 12 years because you thought you were financially independent at 31 and now you're 43 and haven't had to log into Slack or show up to a job or retain these skills on, for the last 12 years, well, I don't know if people are going to be knocking down the door to hire you and be like, what have you been up to? Well, I've been gallivanting, right, around Mexico for the last 12 years. Okay.
This word is going to be the end of me.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, just think about how much technology has changed over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Like Zoom wasn't a thing.
We've literally gone through like 4 different employee training softwares here, Shane, in 4 years. It was
God, don't start with me.
Mighty Networks, Train You All, I forget what else. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's 4 years.
I love the meme of like working at a startup is, hey, did you make sure you update your PTO and Googleify because now we're switching over our backend to Donato. It's just like a bunch of made up like Jabberwocky words.
Yeah, and they all do the same thing. Okay, just one's like a little bit cheaper and looks a little bit cooler. Yeah, great.
Yeah. All right, so I'm remembering now. I forgot about this fire. By the way, I need to go to this fire conference that they have in the summer times. I have to meet the people that are obsessed with money and talk about it all the time. It's such a rare thing. But so the 25x rule, I forgot about this rule.
Yeah.
There's another rule of thumb that we use to estimate.
Rule.
You just invert it, right? Instead of multiplying the number by 4%, you find your number by taking your expenses and multiplying them by 25.
Yeah.
So if I'm spending $10,000 a month,
then you're spending $120,000 a year. You need to multiply that by 25.
I need $3 million.
Yeah.
To reverse engineer.
But here's the tricky part about it. You need $3 million after tax if you're spending $10,000 a month after tax. And so you have $3 million and it's all in IRA money, or it's...
I hate you. You're making it hard.
Yeah. How do you think I'm going to stay employed, right? People need help with this shit.
You telling me ChatGPT can't answer all these questions? They're not going to delete the industry?
I don't think so. I think it's a tool, like many things. I think the death of the financial advisory space has been greatly exaggerated.
Right on.
Along with Mark
right
Twain's.
Okay.
Was it Mark Twain? Was that Edgar Allan Poe? Who the hell was My Death Has Been Greatly Exaggerated? I think that was Twain.
I think it's Twain. Yeah.
Anyway. If
AJ
were here, she would know.
No, she doesn't. No, she would.
I feel like she would.
Let's ping her on that. Speaking of AJ, we have this other article here about Wall Street Journal, from the Journal, jobs hiring golfers, about how golf is becoming a really important skill to have when getting jobs. And if you are being recruited, especially on Wall Street, being able to golf very well is a sought after skill set. This is the most Wall Street Journal coded artital I've ever read.
Yeah, they know their audience. They know their audience. They picked up like...
You should be golfing more, Wall Street Journal reader.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing, though. I think the irony of this is that, I don't know, 6 or 8 years, probably like 8 years ago, it was golfing is dying off. It's an old white guy sport. Young people really don't golf as much anymore. Business isn't being done as much on the golf course. That trend has started to shift. And it sounds like, in this post-COVID world, where it's less about the number of, in some spaces at least, less so about the number of hours you spend sitting at your desk and more so about getting your work done. And much more of a focus on building and maintaining interpersonal relationships after we got cooped up for a year and a half, 2 years in the pandemic. It's really been, I think there has been a little bit of a shift, right? And, if I think this quote right here is the financial advisor who does all his tasks by 10 a.m. and then just go golfs the rest of the day. First of all, it's not like that's just like one dude. There's literally like thousands of financial advisors that work for like 2 hours a day. So good for him. I'd like to see the planning that he's doing and the execution, how he's really helping his clients. It sounds like,
for sure,
it sounds a little bit like a crock to me, but
I want to get his client lists.
Yeah. And then let's book him for some discovery calls and we'll chat with him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Show you what an actual financial planner does.
I'll show you what financial planners that work for a living do. But
that work 8 hours a day.
Yeah. It's amazing what we can get done. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly the stereotype. But I do think the golf force has come back. And I think in a little bit more of a diverse way than it was before. But my evidence is largely anecdotal because AJ, not just another pretty swing, as she calls herself in her golfer influencer account, is out there and playing a lot and playing with a lot of women. And we just had the LPGA Tour make its way through Lancaster, and a ton of women golfers, and definitely a sport that has risen in popularity. But I've golfed very little. Have done the few times that I have has been a little bit more in a professional sense. But I don't know. I mean, do you imagine, Shane, making a business deal on a golf course? I'm not going to golf with you to get a business deal done. I'm going to golf with you because I've already done a business deal with you and because I want to spend time with you. I don't want to be sold for 4 hours on a golf course. And I don't know. That was going to sway my decision.
Yeah, I hear you. I have a couple thoughts on it. And I used to hate golf. My dad used to take me as a kid. Luckily, I maintained a bit of that, like the fundamentals.
Yeah.
So when I do go out there, like I probably play 36 holes a year, maybe 18 holes a year, and it's always goofy, but I can hit like maybe one good shot per hole. That's always my goal. Yeah. Like 3 shots will go into the woods, but I'll hit like a good chip shot onto the green, or I'll hit a nice putt or something, and that's fine. All right, so skills-wise, I can do it. I get in this article why they're saying like having a really good golf swing is really helpful because you don't have to focus too much on your actual swing. You're not always in the woods. You're just constantly talking to the people that you're golfing with, and it's really nonchalant. And you get an opportunity to really dive deep into whatever the hell you're talking about. And then you might be wondering, like, well, what the hell are you talking about? And I anecdotally, I'm not a big golfer, but I did like at the accounting conferences, there's always like a crew of other accounting owners that go on golf that they like to golf. So it's almost like a Cold War situation where if other people are doing it, you kind of need to do it.
Mutually assured
like
golfing.
He's got a gun. Mutually assured. Yeah, there you go. Bring it back to your nuclear reference earlier. So if other people are golfing, you get out there and you realize that, like, yeah, you're not going to only talk about your personal life for 4 hours. Like, eventually you're going to talk about your business, the proprietary tech tool that you're building, or like you just let somebody go. That's a tax manager that might work for somebody else in this space, or they've heard about some tech tool updates that solve one of your problems. So I think like the higher you go up in a company, like the less technical you get and the more like interpersonal or just awareness, things that aren't going to be in the news all the time, or kind of behind closed doors, or just are so rare, like M&A transactions there's a lot of inefficiencies to be, not everything is published and available. Like it's helpful to build those connections. So I do, honestly, I agree that this is a nice skill to have if you're going to be golfing and you're going to be hanging out with other golfers and shooting the shit. Like it's impressive too. Like being good at this gives the impression that you would be good at other things. So like it gives you the air of confidence, and
I think
you know how to practice, or you know how to do something difficult.
I think there's I have a member, not me, but just, somebody has
also the membership stuff.
People have
right?
membership at a golf club. They use it to take their clients out there, their colleagues, that sort of thing, right? It's a perk that they can offer. It's a status thing. So be it, that's your thing. It's not really my thing, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I think there's also the folks who, and this is the part of our industry that I don't particularly love, that there are some folks that they join the golf club to infiltrate the golf club to get clients at the golf club of their membership. Yeah. And it's like, you're here for that. And that's the part that I don't know. It's a little kitschy to me. It's a little, it's not my thing. Sure. It's not my way of developing business. But, teach their own.
You're doing it on the kickball field.
Exactly. I'm not.
You're cultivating.
There's a guy on my kickball team who is. There's 4 financial advisors on my kickball team, all with different business models. So there is somebody who's trying to do it. I play kickball and go to my pool to get away. Love my clients dearly. Love my work, but I do that to get away from it, not to bring it into that.
Absolutely.
It's good to have safe spaces.
No one on this call knows how to walk into a club and just start handing out business cards. I mean, I guess we could, but it's just not our vibe.
We could.
All right. Anything else we should cover this week, my man?
I think we've covered it. No episode next week. It's the 4th of July, folks. Shane, what are you doing for the 4th of July in Mexico? Do they celebrate it in Mexico?
They do not, no. I usually travel internationally during 4th of July because the office is closed. But this year I might come to the States because I haven't seen the fireworks in a while and I want to see some friends. If I don't do that, I'll go into the woods in like Chiapas, like in the deep cut of Mexico, and maybe go on like a whitewater rafting crew, or maybe go surfing in Puerto Escondido, something like that. What about you?
Nice. I'm going to hang tight here at the apartment, do some grilling at the pool with some friends on the actual 4th, and then go up. I grew up at a lake, and my parents are having a little cookout on the weekend after. And so I'm going to spend some time with the family, take it easy. We'll be closed next Thursday, next Friday, and that means no episode of the Liquidity Event next week. You and AJ, I believe, will be back in the saddle in 2 weeks. And so we'll be able to hear about her gallivanting adventures. And so excited to have AJ back and see what she's been up to.
Right on. Cool. Well, just a quick shout out to Maddie Roche, one of my favorite listeners of the podcast. Hope you're listening this week. And thank you so much for everyone else that's listening. Email us your financial problems at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com. Leave us a voicemail at memo.fm/the liquidity event, and we'll play it on the air. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast. Signing out for July 4th, Summer John.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.